Please be seated. The court is now back in session. Once again, the floor is given to Judge Lavance to put the questions to this witness. You may proceed, Judge.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I now request that the full photographs I referred to earlier on be placed on the screen, beginning with photograph E190.1.143.
Voilà, Madame. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire...
Madam, could you please tell us whether you know anyone on this photograph?
In this photo, I recognize Kieu Sampon and Ieng Sari.
Voilà, donc, a priori, il participe à ce...
In principle, he is at a banquet, and in principle, he looks healthy. Regarding Ieng Sari, I don't know whether that photograph can be placed on the screen again. Unless I am wrong, Mr. Ieng Sari was the second from the left on that photograph.
Voilà. Donc, Monsieur Ieng Sari était...
Very well. Mr. Ieng Sari was indeed the second from the left, isn't it?
Yes.
Et votre mari était-il au milieu?
And was your husband in the middle?
Yes, that is correct.
Alors, on va passer à une autre...
Let us look at another photograph, E190.1.178.
Voilà, donc s'il est possible de conserver...
If it is possible, may I request that this photograph be kept on the screen? Madam, can you tell us whether you know anyone on this photograph?
I recognize Kieu Sampon. And another person It's probably Nuon Chi, although I'm not 100% sure.
Alors, il semble que effectivement Nunchia se
Now, it looks as if Nunchia is indeed to the right, and in the middle is your husband seated on a couch.
290.1.82.
The other photograph is E190.1.182.
Voilà, même question. Est-ce que vous reconnaissez
Same question. Do you recognize anyone on this photograph?
I recognize Ieng Sari and Kieu Sampon.
Voilà, donc effectivement, c'est
Indeed, that is what we find on the photograph. And the last photograph is E190.1.122.
voilà. Qui reconnaissez-vous cette photo?
There we are. Who do you recognize on that photograph?
I recognize Ieng Sari.
Que Sampan est complètement sur la gauche et Yang Sari était au milieu. Voilà, donc madame.
Yes, Kisampong on the far left, Yang Sari in the middle. Now you tell us, madam, that your husband didn't go to banquets and eat lavish meals. Do you wish to stand by what you said earlier?
Yes, I still stand by my statement because I didn't know about these parties.
Alors,
All right, let's talk now a little bit about the atmosphere that reigned in K1 and K3. And I mean the working atmosphere and the kind of relations that prevail between Kisampong, Nyun Chia, Pol Pot and Ieng Sari and others who were working there. Was it a rather relaxed atmosphere? Did you see these people ever get angry, express disagreements? Did your husband say that he had misgivings or fears? Tell us about the atmosphere.
The atmosphere was normal. Nobody was fearful.
alors j'aimerais.
Thank you. I'd like to read an extract from a book written by your husband. It's document E3/18, and it's the book about the recent history of Cambodia and the positions I took. In French ERN, it's 0059 54 36 to 37, and in English 0010 37 54 to 55. And I'm afraid I don't have the ERN in Khmer. Mr. Kisampong is describing the meetings of the Standing Committee that he attended, and he describes them as being comparable to meetings of friends or meetings among families. And he even adds Very often these meetings take on a jovial atmosphere. Now, when Mr. Kyosompong came home from work, did he tell you the different jokes that he had heard?
I cannot recall everything, but it happened sometimes. He spoke about the people who sold watermelons and about other trivial things, and he laughed. And that somebody made a joke about this or about that, about selling watermelon. That somebody made a profit from selling a watermelon, but there were no other major things. Yes, there were a lot of jokes, but I cannot recall all the jokes.
Bien.
All right. In continuing his description, he says, further down, even after the arrest of one of the members of the Central Committee and later again of one of the members of the Standing Committee, trust in Phnom Penh, Pol Pot did not seem to be diminished. Each one of these disappearances seemed to be seen as a unique case and probably, in the eyes of those who were within the circle of confidence, justified. Did your husband ever share with you any thoughts when one or another person within your entourage disappeared?
He told me after, he told me about Hu Num and Hu Yun, who were his close friends. And he said the truth should not have been disappeared.
Et pourquoi?
Why shouldn't the person have disappeared, and what does disappearing actually mean?
At that time, I did not pay much attention to disappearance because everybody had his or her respective place to stay, and I did not know whether they went here or there or they went to work elsewhere.
Ça vous intéressait de savoir?
Did you have any interest in knowing what happened to your husband's friends? Or were you no more interested in them than you were in the members of your in-laws' family?
Later on, he recalled the event and why they did that. He had these questions and he talked to me about that. Why they did so and so. And he did not speak about anything else.
Alors parlons maintenant.
Let's turn now to your own family, madam. You told us that you come from a region called Sector 103 during the Democratic Cambodia regime. Were you ever told about purges occurring in Sector 103? Were you ever told about the fact that certain members of your family had been arrested? Were you told about the bad treatment that was meted out to them? And if you did hear about this, can you tell us how?
At that time, in Sector 103, I did not know anything at all. Even the fate about my family members, I did not know about their arrest. And only 1 year later, I learned about it.
Quand
When was that? And how did you find out?
One day, they were released, and it was in 1978, it almost the time that the Vietnamese arrived. At that time, one of my relatives who were detained was actually previously worked at the K1. I was told that my elder relative had been arrested and placed at the Ta Khmer, and I asked who that person was, and I was told there were elder and younger brothers and other cousins who were arrested, and I learned about that at the time.
je vais donner
I'm going to read another part of your husband's book on the recent history of Cambodia. In French, it's 00595513. In English, it's 00103793. And in this book, your husband says that you broke down in tears hearing about the atrocities committed against your brothers and relatives and other people. Is that factual?
ចាពិតមែន
Je pense qu'on a encore un problème de communication. Je n'ai pas eu la...
I didn't hear the translation of your answer, madam. I seem to understand that you were saying yes, but I would need to be sure, so could you please repeat your answer?
Yes, that is correct.
Et ceci,
Now, in your estimation, did this happen before the members of your family were released or after?
It was after the release of my family members, including my parents. My parents were also arrested.
Donc,
so, you found out that close members of your family were arrested, and simultaneously you learnt that they had been released. So what you're telling me is that, according to you, Kyosampan intervened to release the members of your family, or are you in fact not saying that?
At that time, my husband did not intervene, but in fact, personnel from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who went to work in Siem Reap and saw that people who were sweeping the road were emaciated, and they had questions about their appearance, and I learned about that at a later stage. And especially during the period that the Vietnamese arrived, as we gathered around and we spoke about what happened. And they said that frequently they saw what happened, then those Foreign Affairs personnel reported to Pol Pot, and Pol Pot asked people to make an investigation into the matter. And at that time, everybody was released, including my family members. And especially at that time, I actually went to Tak Mau without the knowledge of my husband. I went with a driver who was transporting goods to that direction. And I saw a lot of people. They were emaciated, and they were given food and rice, and there were hundreds of them, and my family members were amongst them.
Had your husband been given information from staff in the Foreign Ministry that he didn't share with you about the abusive treatment of people in the Siem Reap zone?
Upon my return, I cried and I asked him what happened and whether he knew about it or not. He said that he not even heard about it, let alone knowing about it. And he said he did not even know what his close colleagues did or where they went. He said that he did not know anything about that. And he asked who actually made the arrest. And whether I knew about it. That's what he asked me.
So to have information about what was happening in Cambodia on the realities of abusive treatment, he turned to you. He didn't turn to Pol Pot or Nun Chia or other people he worked with.
My apology, could you please repeat your question? I cannot hear your question properly.
Madam, I was saying that if I'm understanding you correctly here, that your husband, when he needed to have information about what was happening in Cambodia, including possible abusive treatment undergone by part of the population of the country, he turned to you, a person whose only duty was to cook meals, to get his information. hear any news through any other channels. He didn't hear any of these facts from people he was seeing every day, whose names were Pol Pot and Nun Chea. He didn't receive any telegrams. He didn't get any information, except from you.
Because at that time I told him that because he did not know about it, I did not know whether some other people or network knew about it, but he himself seemed not to know about it, and he asked me those questions. And I told him what I was told by my family members.
Voilà, donc
Therefore, let me just point out for the record that we do have an interview recording E3/424, which refers to a report to Khieu Samphan by telegram. We also have a record of a witness interview, which is E3/430 from another witness called Prumsul. So, madam, did you ever hear any talk of telegrams to Mr. Khieu Samphan? Right. Did you ever hear about the arrest of a person called Chuchet? Koitun, Pong, Dun, Tibol. Did you ever hear about arrests when you were in K1 or K3?
I did not know about these people that you spoke about.
avez-vous en...
Did you ever hear talk of enemies within or outside the ranks of the regime who were burrowing from inside? Did you ever hear people talking about enemies who had to be purged?
In the office, they spoke about being vigilant and not to reveal secrecy, because there were enemies who were attempting to destroy us, and for that reason we had to be vigilant. But when you spoke about the inside or outside the rank, that's beyond my knowledge at the time.
Bien, merci, Monsieur.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I have no further questions for this witness.
President, thank you, Judge. The floor is now given to the prosecution to put questions to this witness. You may proceed.
May it please you, Mr. President, Your Honours, good morning to my fellow counsel, and good morning to you, Madam Sochiat. In the last 15 minutes or so,
នៅក្នុង15នាទីចុងក្រោយនេះ
you have given
លោកស្រីបាន
this evidence
ផ្ដល់ភស្តុតាងដូចតទៅនេះ
that you had a direct face-to-face conversation
ការសន្ទនាដោយផ្ទាល់
with your husband
ជាមួយប្តីរបស់លោកស្រី
about two people called Hu Yun and Hu Nim,
ហ៊ូយុនហើយនិងហ៊ូនឹម
that he told you
ដែលថាប្តីរបស់លោកស្រី
that they had disappeared
បានបាត់ខ្លួន
and that they should not have disappeared.
មិនក៏បីត្រូវបាត់ខ្លួនទេ
When did that conversation take place?
ខ្ញុំសួរលោកស្រីថាតើការសន្ទនាជាមួយប្តីលោកស្រីនោះនៅក្នុងថ្ងៃខែឆ្នាំណាដែរទេបាទ
ចាខ្ញុំមិនចាំថ្ងៃមិនចាំខែទេ
I cannot recall the exact date, but it was at a later stage
លឺការកាត់សម្លាប់
when we heard the news about the mass arrest and about the killing. So he and I spoke about that.
វៀតណាមចូលមកក្នុង
And he actually told me after the arrival of the Vietnamese in Phnom Penh. And he did not tell me anything about that prior to that period of time.
Your husband
សំណួរ
has told you
លោកស្រីបានប្រាប់លោកស្រី
in the context of mass arrests and killings
មនុស្សច្រើនហើយនឹងការសម្លាប់
that he was aware
ហើយថាគាត់បានដឹង
that Hu Nim and Hu Yun
ហើយនឹងហ៊ូនឹម
had been arrested and disappeared.
ខ្លួនហើយក៏
Is that correct?
តើសេចក្តីនេះត្រឹមត្រូវដែរឬទេ
សូមបញ្ជាក់
Allow me to clarify.
ពេលដែលគាត់និយាយជាមួយខ្ញុំគឺពេលក្រោយ
He
ណាអ្នក
spoke to me about that later on, but regarding the mass arrest earlier,
ដឹងពេលក្រោយហើយគាត់
he knew about that later on, and he only told me about that at a later stage.
Thank you. You've clarified that.
សហប្រញ្ញាសូមអរគុណដែលលោកស្រីបានបំភ្លឺ
When he told you later on,
នៅពេលដែលលោក
did he say who had ordered the arrests of Hu Nim and Hu Yun?
ជាឲ្យគេចាប់ខ្លួនហ៊ូនឹមនិងហ៊ូយុនដែរឬទេ
គាត់ក៏មិនដែលប្រាប់ខ្ញុំថាអ្នកណាអ្នកបញ្ជា
He did not tell me who actually ordered their arrest.
But you're quite clear
សំណួរ
that he told you to your face that they should not have been arrested.
មិនគាត់
Is that
ត្រូវគេ
correct?
ចាប់ខ្លួនទេតើអញ្ចឹងដែរឬទេ
ចា
Yes, it is.
Why should they not have been arrested?
ហេតុអីបានជា
Did he say
គេចាប់ខ្លួនគាត់តើគេមានបញ្ហាអ្វីឬទេ
តាមខ្ញុំឮគាត់តែងតែនិយាយថា
As he told me,
ខំមកកំសត់កំរទាំងអស់គ្នា
they came from the hardship together and that now they disappeared. So he did not understand of what they did, why they disappeared. That was all he told me. And I myself did not know about that either.
គាត់ប្រាប់ខ្ញុំថាប៉ុណ្ណា
one of these gentlemen was arrested in 1975
ក្នុងឆ្នាំ
and the other in 1977?
ចាប់ខ្លួនម្នាក់ទៀតនៅក្នុងឆ្នាំ 1970
They were both intellectuals, weren't they? Hu Nim and Hu Yun.
តើហ៊ូនឹមនិងហ៊ូយុនសុទ្ធតែជាបញ្ញាជនដែរឬទេ
ចាគាត់ជាបញ្ញជន
Yes, they were intellectuals.
Were they people to whom your husband was close?
តែពីរនាក់ហ្នឹងជាមនុស្សដែលជិតស្និទ្ធជាមួយនឹងប្តីរបស់លោកស្រីដែរឬទេ
ចាការពីឆ្នាំមុន75ធ្លាប់
Before 1975, they were close.
And after 1975? How much did Q Sampon see of them both shortly before or shortly after the evacuation of Phnom Penh? Can you help us?
It was after the liberation of Phnom Penh. He did not meet with the crew.
According to your testimony or knowledge, when did Q Sampon last meet with Hu Nim and Hu Yun before the evacuation?
I never saw him meet them or where he met them last.
As far as you were concerned, would you describe Hu Nim and Hu Yun as some of your husband's closest colleagues because of the history they'd shared together?
On this matter, I cannot comment on it because in reality back then I was not a politician and it was not my task to think of it. My job was confined to kitchen work. I did not know what he was doing and the closeness in his working relation with others. I did not know.
When you were talking with your husband at the later point about Hu Nim and Hu Yun, did he say anything to you about 9 out of 16 of his former Grunk and Funk colleagues being arrested and killed?
No, others did not say anything about it. At that time, I saw Hu Nam and Hu Jun. He talked to me, but as for others, they did not share with me anything. They might have known or might not have known. I did not know. And then later on, they came to know it, but I did not know what they had thought about it.
When your husband was speaking to you about Hu Yun and Hu Nim being arrested and disappearing, did he say that that had something to do with them being enemy agents?
No, he did not discuss this with me. He did not discuss the reason why they arrested them.
In all of the time since 1979, have you ever had one conversation with your husband where you've asked him, "Husband, what was the reason that so many people died in democratic Kampuchea?"
ធិបតេយ្យដែរទេលោកស្រីធ្លាប់តែសួរប្តីលោកស្រីបែបនេះដែរទេ
ចាខ្ញុំធ្លាប់
Yes, I did ask him.
And was one of his replies something like this? People were accused and arrested because they were agents of the Vietnamese or the CIA or something like that.
He talked to me in general terms. He said people were not properly treated, those who were evacuated. They had to go on hunger, and he was wondering, and he was also shocked and horrified upon hearing the news of the starvation of people. And as for the CIA agent, they had nothing to do with the ordinary citizen, the civilians. He told me that these people were not had nothing to do with CIA. Why did they have to undergo this starvation? This is what he used to say with me.
In 1981, your husband had an interview with a man called Stephen Hedder. The relevant E number is E3/203, and the entry I refer to is English ERN 00424016, French 00434236 to 37, Khmer 00385 through 14. And Mr. Hedder posed this question, and I quote, "What I wanted to ask was, at the time, was about anyone who was accused of being either a CIA agent or UN agents. I want to ask if any of them were accused of being UN agents in order to kill them, in order to kill true patriots. Did that happen among the upper echelon? Yes, this is the answer. Yes, there was a comrade in the West. He was an old man. He was accused by the UN agents. They were responsible for that. They accused him. However, they were not successful because we investigated the case in a timely manner." Close quote. Do you know why, when your husband was speaking with Mr. Hedder in 1981, he made no mention of being aware of the arrests and disappearances of Hu Nim and Hu Yuen?
Well, generally, when he talked with me, he only responded to what I asked him, and he did not elaborate further because I was not a politician. I was only a housewife. I was a cook. I did not have any interest in the political affairs. I did not know who was who and what they did. I was not aware.
has your husband ever mentioned to you a letter written to him from Hunim saying that he, Hunim, had been arrested on the 10th of April 1977? And that document is E3 that refers to it, E3/1550. So I repeat the question: has your husband ever said anything to you about a letter addressed to him from Hunim complaining that he had been arrested on the 10th of April 1977?
No, I never heard of it.
Why would Hunim, having been arrested, be writing a letter to your husband?
The President. Witness, please hold on. An international counsel for Mr. Kyew Sampon, you may proceed.
I just want to inform you that we haven't heard the question in French, Mr. President.
The President, I think that this is the same issue again. Can you please check with the interpreting team why the interpretation failed to come through? Can you make sure that this work very well? And if there is any issue, please address this issue in a timely manner.
Your Honour, can I just say for everyone's benefit that yesterday the French interpreters came to me to say that I wasn't giving sufficient pauses. So I anticipate the problem is mine, and I will now give better pauses. To repeat the question, Madame Sosotia, can you help us at all on why Hunim, shortly after his arrest on the 10th of April 1977, would be writing to your husband to complain about his arrest?
The President, witness, please hold on. The National Counsel for Mr. Kyew Sampon, you may proceed. Counsel Kung Samon, thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Your Honors. I would like to object to the question raised by the prosecutor, because Madame Sosuchiat must not know the reason why Mr. Hunim wrote a letter to Mr. Kyew Sampon, and the testimony that Madame Sosuchiat will be responding to him will be of a speculative nature, and I don't think that the testimony of this kind will not assist the chamber in any way. So I would like Mr. President to direct the prosecutor to avoid from asking a question of this nature. Thank you.
Mr. President, given the amount of contact that Madame Sosuchiat accepts occurred between Hunim, Huyun and Kyew Sampon prior to 1975, according to her evidence, this, in my respectful submission, does not call for speculation, and the evidential foundation has already been set.
The President, the objection and ground for objection by the defense team for Mr. Kyusampon on the last question put by the prosecutor is sustained. These questions will elicit the speculation or personal opinion of the witness, and that is not appropriate in the proceedings before us, and therefore witness is directed not to respond to the last question posed by the prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Sosochiet, document E3/231 is the minutes of a meeting of the Standing Committee on the 8th of March 1976, which shows that the participants at the meeting included your husband, Super Comrade Hem, and Comrade Horse, who is Hu Nim. Now, did your husband at any stage say to you that he had attended important meetings after 1975 with Hu Nim?
I am testifying before this chamber as a witness, and I am telling the court that back then I was not a politician, I was a cook, I was a housewife. I am telling the court what I heard, what I saw at that time, because what you have asked me is beyond my knowledge. This involves politics, who were the job of the politician in the authority.
5 days after the arrest of Hu Nim, on the 15th of April 1977, your husband gave a second anniversary speech that was broadcast on the Phnom Penh Home Service. The document is E3/201. There is an extract on English page 00419513, Khmer 00292804 through 5, French 006121166, when your husband said these words, and I quote, "We must wipe out the enemy in our capacity as masters of the situation, following the lines of domestic policy, foreign policy, and military policy of our revolutionary organization. Everything must be done neatly and thoroughly. We must not become absent-minded, careless, or forgetful because of past victories. On the contrary, we must further steel ourselves, remain alert, constantly maintain the spirit of revolutionary vigilance, and continue to fight and suppress all stripes of enemy at all times." close quote. Did you listen to that broadcast by your husband?
I do not recall. I actually did not listen to his speech or broadcast.
Where did he go to make his broadcasts after the 17th of April 1975?
That I do not know.
Well, just so that we're clear, did he ever say to you that he was off to the offices of the Ministry of Propaganda, where there was a broadcast facility used by the former regime?
No, I never heard of him saying that he was off for that place.
This speech mentions revolutionary vigilance. You've used that phrase already in your evidence, haven't you? Revolutionary vigilance.
Yes, I have.
During the period of democratic Cambodia from 1975 to 1979, and we know the dates, did you ever, on any conversation, have a single reference between you and Khieu Samphan when you were talking about revolutionary vigilance?
My husband and I rarely talk to each other about this task because we had our respective responsibility. Our tasks were completely different. I was confined to the kitchen work. I prepare food and do the laundry, and I had to take care of my kids too. So for the discussion on the matter of this kind was not a common discussion with us. And as a tradition in Cambodia, housewife had to do the housework, and we did not interfere into our husband's work. As a housewife, we were not supposed to know everything our husband had to do. That's what our tradition dictates at that time. As a housewife, we were confined to our housework and work in the kitchen. From 1975 to 1979, there was discipline in relation to the roaming around the place and the discussion of other people's businesses. And in addition, we were individually busy with our responsibility. And he, as a husband, in his free time, he also assisted me in taking care of our kids. We did not have time really to discuss matters of this kind in details.
Forgive me for interrupting, but that was a very long answer. But you did discuss it with him. Revolutionary vigilance. You've just said so, haven't you?
I never discussed revolutionary vigilance with Mr. Kêu Sampon personally, but it was the discipline in the workplace that everyone had to be vigilant. They had to be materially vigilant, revolutionary vigilant, and in other words, we had to be vigilant at all time. So this was the principle of discipline which was common in our workplace. Everyone had to be vigilant.
Thank you. Thank you.
When I talked to him, I never discussed revolutionary vigilance.
Are you changing your answers as your evidence goes along when you realise you've made a mistake?
Please, if I change my statement, please make it known to me, because if I made any erroneous statement, please advise me.
Well, let's just break down what you've told the court this morning. I asked you a very simple question. You accepted that you had used the phrase revolutionary vigilance in your evidence. I then asked you if you had discussed this with Kyu Sampong, and you said, we rarely talked about this task. I then asked you, but you did talk about it, didn't you? And your response was, oh no, we didn't talk about revolutionary vigilance. So you've changed your evidence within 3 minutes, haven't you?
I would like to clarify the statement I made earlier. You asked me that there was revolutionary vigilance in place at that time. As I said in my statement, I did discuss revolutionary vigilance, but I discussed it at my workplace. At my workplace, everyone were put on vigilance. I did discuss revolutionary vigilance, but as I said, I discussed this subject in general because everyone in every workplace, everyone had to be vigilant, but never had I discussed this subject matter with my husband.
The document that Judge Laverne referred to, being, I think, what you called the family book, which is to do with registering people, is E275.8. Do I have this right, that this was a document that had to be completed when you and the other members of your family were moving house? Or was it for some other reason?
I am sorry, are you referring to the family book or resident book or something? I do not really get your question.
Was the family book completed because you were moving house?
Well, when we moved to Border Mill in Pailan, then we moved on to Kon Klong. We changed our residence.
Do I understand the procedure correctly, that when a family is moving house, documents have to be handed over to a local registrar.
បុគ្គលទៅឲ្យខាងឃុំសកាត់តើអញ្ចឹងមែនទេ
ចា៎
Yes, that's correct.
Do I have it right that every person over the age of 18 has to provide documentary evidence to the registrar?
ទៅខាងចុះបញ្ជីឃុំសកាត់នោះត្រឹមត្រូវទេ
ចា៎ត្រឹមត្រូវ
Yes, that is correct.
Do I have it right that when the person hands a document to the registrar, there has to be a witness in the room?
គឺថាចាំបាច់ត្រូវតែមានសាក្សីនៅក្នុងបន្ទប់នោះនៅពេលដែលប្រគល់ឯកសារនោះ
That I do not understand whether or not there was a requirement for a witness to be present. The President, counsel for Mr. Kyusampon, you may proceed. Counsel Kungsamon. Thank you, Mr. President. I am of the opinion that the prosecutor is asking the witness on the subject that is not the focus of the hearing today. If the prosecutor wishes to know the procedure for the family registration in Cambodia, I believe that he should request the chamber to summon the commune registrar officer to come to testify, because I don't think that she is in the position to enlighten the court on this procedure. Thank you.
Mr. President, can I explain that this questioning is going to the date of birth of her son, Q Udom. That was felt to be an issue of such significance that it was one of the first issues addressed by direct questioning from His Honour Judge Laverne. Therefore, any questioning relating to the date of birth of Q Udom is relevant in this trial. It is relevant particularly because, and this will be apparent to everybody in the courtroom, that Sosochiet gave testimony yesterday that the date of birth was the 4th of May 1974, and we're now faced with a document that says it's the 6th of June 1974. This glaring contradiction can only be properly assessed and you enabled to establish the truth through questioning on this issue.
The President. The objection and ground for objection by the defense team for Mr. Kyusampon is not appropriate. The Chamber wishes to hear the response of this witness in question to the question put by the prosecutor. Witness, please respond to the question. The President, Madam Sochiet, do you recall the last question put by the prosecutor? Madam Sochiet, could you please repeat it? The President, Mr. Prosecutor, please repeat your last question.
I think you partly answered it, but I'm going to ask it again. When you were present in front of the registrar in the registrar's office, do you remember somebody else being in the room as a witness to make sure that the procedure went properly? And I think to sign as a witness.
When we got it registered at that time, the procedure was rather brief. We did not have a witness. There was only the presence of the clerk, the commune clerk, and the registrar. And they asked me they told me at that time if I could not recall it very well, I simply put an indicative date first. So I decided to follow what the date was in the document that we had in our possession, because to my recollection they told me that if I could not recall the exact date, I can simply give an approximate date or so. That was the birth certificate of my first child, and as for my other child, we just prepared the birth certificate just in the last few years, and we follow it according to their identification card. As for the exact date, he was born on the 4th of May 1974. So when we decided on the date, I also sought ideas and opinion of the court clerk, rather the commune clerk, the president. Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor, and thank you, Madam Witness. The time is now appropriate for lunch adjournment. The chamber will adjourn now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon. I note the prosecutor is on his feet. You may proceed.
Mr. President, forgive me. Can I just ask, please, Mr. President, this? As we all know, His Honour Judge Lavern's questioning took up a large amount of this morning. Can I safely assume that I will be allowed that time that was taken up with that questioning? And, Mr. President, can I respectfully say that I am not very far through my cross-examination notes?
The President. The chamber will definitely allot the time to the parties, and as for the questions that may be asked by others other than the parties, then the chamber will compensate the time so that it make up with the time allocated to each party. So the times that Judge Laverne put the question to the witness will be taken from the time allocated to the party.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The President. Madam Sosachit, according to the schedule on your testimony, we actually scheduled to conclude it this morning, but due to the questions asked by the judge of the bench, therefore we cannot conclude it this morning. Therefore, please be advised that your testimony has not yet concluded. You will be invited to testify this afternoon. in order to complete your testimony. Court officer is now instructed to assist the witness during the break and have her return to this courtroom together with her duty counsel before 1:30 this afternoon. Security guards are instructed to bring Mr. Keo Sampon to the holding cell downstairs and have him return to this courtroom before 1:30 this afternoon. The court is now adjourned.
សូមក្រោកឈរ